Maybe I just won't do anything else. Hi, hello. Almost started opening it. It's time. Today is the day. I am ready. The hunt begins. The last booster pack that I purchased. Innistrad Midnight Hunt Part 2. Let's see what's I put. Let's see. Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, let me get this off of the table. Give myself a little more room. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is fine. Whew, I'm a little nervous. Okay. It's fine. I'm gonna try to take the advice from yesterday. I'm gonna be more flexible. I'm gonna not. It's almost low key giving me. Y'all remember like years ago when Allow the World to Be Rewritten was the thing? Let's not treat it as if it were what it's always been, or my perception of what it's been. Let's just read it as it is. And all of the fitting and resonating or whatever will be on you. If it resonates for you, if it doesn't, then don't take it. Yes, it is 12:53, almost 1. I don't know. My sense of time is so messed up. Starting bottom up, first card. We have. Wow. We have a blank card. Huh. Is this like the equivalent to a title card? Not only is it a blank card, but it's a card that's different. So this is interesting. I was thinking about how I'll say naive. I feel like the word isn't naive, but I'll say naive. I was thinking about how naive I can be sometimes when it comes to certain things. And I think I mentioned it before, where it's like if I know that I feel like if I'm not in danger in any way, sometimes my spidey sense doesn't tingle because like I'm not in danger, right? So recently there's been a circumstance in life, I'll say for now. There's been a circumstance in life recently, and there's been like a lot of talk around me. There have been people that have had dreams and stuff like that. But for me, it didn't necessarily. Well, I guess also I knew that in the midst of everything, I would be okay. I would be taken care of. Um, but I didn't have like any of that. And so for me, it was just like, we'll find out when we find out. I'm not going to stress over it, and I still wouldn't stress over it. And I guess, too, maybe that is an interesting point because all this time, the mill has been turning. It's like no one's prepared. I'm not going to say no one, but I mean, like, yeah, still try. Anyway. That's besides the point. Like for me, because I knew ultimately that I would be okay, it wasn't something that necessarily like, excuse me, pinged my radar. And I saw something about, it was a post on Facebook about how like NASA is launching 3 rockets into the shadow of the moon or something like that, the dark side of the moon on the day of the eclipse, at the time of the eclipse, how CERN is going to be booting up. And it was like, why is no one talking about this? What's going on? What's happening? And in my world, I'm like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't concern me. I don't know if I should be concerned, but like they're scientific organizations. And so if they're conducting some kind of test or research on a celestial event, like total solar eclipses aren't super, super common, but they're not super, super rare either. You know what I mean? Like they happen. And wherever like the side of the world that it's on, like I read an article, like people do tests during the eclipse times because it's a set of circumstances that doesn't necessarily happen often everywhere all the time. So it's like while it's happening, let's take advantage. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe they're doing something like that. Like maybe there are some things that can only be witnessed or observed in the absence of sunlight, but still during the day. And then I had a question because I saw in the article something about how in like 1919 or something like that, Einstein's theory of relativity was supported because it was how gravity distorts space time or something like that. And then it was like if that were true, then certain stars would be in places where you don't usually see them. And it was like supposedly observed that stars looked like they were in the wrong sort of spot or something like that. I don't know, girl. Now, is that something deeper than just a theory of relativity? It could be. But again, it's just like things that can only be witnessed, observed, or proven during the times of those circumstances. Could it be something larger? It could be. But all that to say, it was a question. Well, then I had the question of like, which is it really? Like, where are the stars really? Are the stars are where they are when the sun is not blocked, or is the stars where they are when the sun is? Because maybe the light of the sun, as it refracts across the atmosphere and it bends and does all kind of stuff, maybe it kind of sort of warps things a little bit. And then I was like, well, does it matter? And then I just let the thought go because that's what Patrick does. I'm like, okay, I don't know, it's fine. And then I get this card here, this blank card, where you get like one is the sun, one is the moon, or daytime, nighttime. But this card is single sided. So it's a single sided card that's used to represent a double faced card, which is interesting. So maybe just as there are scientific studies, there are going to be personal inquiries. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Next card is the Timberland Guide. This is a human scout creature. She's holographic. When Timberland Guide enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Hiring an experienced wilderness guide isn't cheap, but it costs less than a search party or a funeral. You can see it's holographic. I didn't turn the light on. That's funny. Does he have eyes? It doesn't look like it. Oh, yeah, he does. Okay. There are eyeballs. I'm like, does this person have eyes or is this just flesh? Uh, this is interesting. It's interesting because we have this single-sided blank card meant to represent a double-faced card, and then we have the Wilderness Guide. I don't know how I feel about Wilderness Guide. Oh, the Timberland Guide, sorry. Timberland Guide. Hiring an experienced wilderness guide isn't cheap, but it costs less than a search party or a funeral. The search party is interesting because we had the search party commander in the last pack of these that I opened up. Because of the tree, because of the trees in this Timberland, this is almost giving me like Idrisil energy. Which is interesting because it almost feels like the Yggdrasil is like reconfiguring itself or something. Which is like huge. That's like the very foundations of the world itself is like moving and reconfiguring. And where was that? It may have been in the Norse divination cards. It was like when certain branches grow heavy or something, then they fall. And it was like, wow, this could be like entire worlds or entire realities just like crashing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this anymore. Oh, I forgot to say this channel isn't sponsored by anything except responsible consumption of substances. Next, we have two double-faced cards. We have 3 double-faced cards back to back. We have 5 double-faced cards back to back. Oh my gosh. 5 double-faced again, because these are like card backs. So if I see something, I know it's a double-faced card. And there are 5 of them back to back. Now, this blank card can represent a double-faced card, but it doesn't necessarily have to represent one of the ones that we already see. We do see the Village Reavers again. Last time they played the role of the good werewolves and the evil humans. Dinnick, the pious apparition. So I guess I'll read the front first. Dinnick, pious apparition. So what's interesting about Dinnick is that both in the nighttime and in the daytime, it's the same name. Dinnick doesn't change, which is very interesting. Love it. So this side, it's a human soldier, lifelink. Cards in graveyards can't be targets of spells or abilities. So disturb. It costs 1 basic or 1 light. I'll call it basic light. 1 light, 1 water, and 2 mana. You may cast this card from your graveyard, transformed for its disturbed cost. So I guess when it's disturbed, it becomes Dinnick, the pious apparition. Oh, so from the graveyard. So this is Dinnick when Dinnick was alive. And this is Dinnick as an apparition. I kind of love the piety, honestly. So on the other side, it has flying. Whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into graveyards from anywhere, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then you can create to investigate is to create a colorless clue artifact token that you can sacrifice to draw a card. If Dinnick Pious Apparition would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. I kind of love this. So on the other side, it's a spirit soldier. On one side, it's a human soldier. So you can disturb it from the graveyard, and it's still pious. Cool. I'm putting these under, it's only 2. It's the blank card and the wilderness guide. Then I'll plan to put all 5 of the face down cards here. And then under that, I'll play the rest of the cards. It should be 5 more because there's 12 altogether. So next we have the Shady Traveler. I can't even read this. So this is a human werewolf. It has menace and it's day bound. I think menace has to be blocked by two monsters or two other cards. You can't block it with just one card. Let me show you. That's the Shady Traveler. And then on the other side, it's the Stalking Predator, which also has menace and it's night bound. See, this feels like not necessarily great werewolf because it's the Shady Traveler in the daytime. It feels like the nature of this man is a beast. So when he becomes a beast, he becomes even more grisly than the average man who was turned into a beast. Yeah, and then we have the Village Reavers. So again, this was the space of the good organization of werewolves or whatever. And it's like they are hunting this stalking predator. This is almost like, I feel like last time it was almost the instance of like the dark of light and the light of dark. When that which promotes itself as righteous is actually has like motives that aren't the best, and that which is um, narrated, characterized, treated as not great is actually better, purer of heart, better in nature, clearer and cleaner of intent and motive than the other side. But this is almost like how we would expect to see it, at least so far. So we have the Village Watch again. There it has haste and daybound. So as soon as you play them, they can move. They like as soon as they show up, they're ready to go, basically. And then on the other side, it's the Village Reavers. So wolves and werewolves you control have haste. So they also quicken and hasten other wolves and werewolves. Now, it doesn't necessarily seem that these two are on the same side. And the Night Reavers, the Village Reavers, are more powerful. They have 4 and 4. Oh, it's gone. I don't think the Black Cherry is my favorite anymore. I think Limeade is taking it. So after that, we have Wing Shredder. So in the daytime, this is the Bird Admirer. She's a lady, a human archer. She has reach and daybound. So reach, she could reach any creature that's flying. So counter flying, I'm pretty sure they have to also be flying or have reach because if they're flying, like they're out of reach, right? So in the daytime, it's this Bird Admirer. Is that weird? That's weird to me. It's weird to me that an admirer of birds would be an archer. Just because it's like, well, like, what are you archering? You know? And she has reach. So she's used to like hitting things in the sky, but she admires birds. Is she one of those like, I admire you, so I must harm you types of, you know what I mean? Like, now she could also too be like inspired by birds, and since she is landlocked or landbound, like an arrow may be her only way to touch the sky. So, well, yeah, she's Wing Shredder. When she's a werewolf, she's Wing Shredder. So yeah, she admires birds and then she shoots them down. She hunts them. That's weird to me. So it's almost like there's this pincer type movement between the stalking predator and the wing shredder against the village reavers. And then the last card is the Tavern Smasher on one side, but the Tavern Ruffian on the other. This is a human warrior werewolf. So we have the human archer, we have the human werewolf. So just the human. We have humans, we have the archer, the warrior, and just another werewolf. I don't. That's still so like to admire something, but want to clip its wings at the same time is just so weird. But in terms of like, see, I'm not supposed to be doing that right now, so I don't know. I'll just leave it as it's. I guess it's interesting that the admirer of the birds is also the hunter of them. And then the Tavern Ruffian, Daybound. If a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. She dispatched every challenger with a sickening snap of bone. Okay, so I think the way I read sickening was not the way it was intended. Like it was sickening. Like no, it was grotesque. Okay, ooh, the way you snapped that bone was fierce. Yes. Um, she dispatched every challenger with a sickening snap of bone. The Tavern Ruffian. And then on the other side is the Tavern Smasher. With every arm in sight broken, she turned her attention to the furniture. This Tavern Smasher is interesting. I don't know, like honestly, Tavern Smasher or the Tavern Ruffian Tavern Smasher is giving me an almost like a hired hand type energy. She's also like the most powerful on the table. Like in the daytime, the bird watcher is less powerful. The village watch is more powerful. And oh yeah, I guess she's about, in terms of power, she's about on par with the rest of them. But it's her toughness, it's her fortitude, it's her stamina. In the daytime, that's really like, so between the daytime and the nighttime, in daytime she has 5 toughness, at nighttime she has 5 toughness. So she remains as like resolute, but she gets a lot stronger. But Tavern Smasher is almost giving me a hired hand, like someone kind of like that old Martian energy, where it's like it's looking for a challenge, it's looking for a fight, and as long as like she's entertained, then she's okay. So what? It's like when she runs out of arms to break, she just like. But I don't. I feel like she dispatched every challenger with a sickening snap of bone as well. So because it's every challenger, I feel like she isn't necessarily, excuse me, like she's not the one initiating the challenges. You know what I mean? It's like if they step up to her, then they end up with a broken arm. And maybe that's the fierce part. The way that she's just like, you know, like, oh, you think you're gonna beat me in an arm wrestling match? Watch this. Ooh, bone snap. But then once you get her going, then it's like she's breaking everything. So I feel like with all of this, it's the energy. It's almost like there are so many things that are being resolved. It's almost like there are things behind the scenes, there are things in front of the camera. It honestly almost reads like there are those who are easily excited or easily excitable. That's what the tavern ruffian, tavern smasher is more so giving me. Like if she's challenged, that's when she starts breaking arms. Um, and when she starts going, then she's going for the furniture. It's like when she starts going, she doesn't stop. And so she's just like, well, it's something. It's like that one person who doesn't necessarily start drama, but every single time something is going on, they're there, and they're making it worse. They're like agitating things. You know, they are. What's that word? I feel like it starts with a P. I can almost, I can almost hear my mom saying it, but it's like it's on the tip of my brain. An instigator. That does not start with a P. It's like once things start happening, then she like instigates it to continue happening. She makes things maybe bigger or worse. And then you have the pious adventurer over here, or the pious apparition. You have Dennick, who feels like, again, like Dennick is stationed at this place and is like guarding or whatever, has this big old shield and just like doing what Dennick is doing, what Dennick thinks is right, both in life and in death. From the grave, Dennick will still do what's right. And then in the middle, you have the stalking predator and the wing shredder that are like trying to take out the village watch slash the village reavers because they don't like that. It gives me, I've seen this in a few shows where it's like there's a time where it's almost like there was a time where things were kind of lawless and there was no consequence. And when things were lawless and there was no consequence, people could do whatever they wanted and there was no consequence. And then there's either a person or a governing body that comes and it introduces order. And in the presence of order, it's like you can't just do whatever you want, whenever you want, without any regard for how it affects others or whatever. It's like it introduces an element of balance. And because the wing shredder and the stalking predator thrive in chaos because they love doing whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it and they don't want to have any consequence, they are against order, even if the order ultimately ends up protecting them from a fate that's worse without it. You know what I mean? Like it's very much so giving me JJK, Jujutsu Kaisen, when the cursed spirits were trying to take over the earth or whatever to make it a cursed spirit paradise. And then you had the exorcists basically that sided with the cursed spirits because when the new powerful exorcist came onto the scene, he introduced an order that didn't, like when he came into power, it wasn't like back in the day, you know, an exorcist could just go out and do whatever they wanted. But now because of him, we got to act right and we don't want to act right. So even if the world does get swallowed by the cursed spirits, we're working against him type of it. It's like it's that kind of energy. So it's like it feels like that's the central sort of thing happening in this wilderness or in this blank card. And then again, you get the person that tries to do what they think is right. And then on the other side, you got the person that's just like bored and easily excitable. And wherever anything is going on, like they're there because that's their personality. Maybe because they're bored. Maybe they have more strength than a quiet life affords or needs than a quiet life calls for. Maybe they should. I feel like that's the type of person that maybe also should, like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what that person should or shouldn't do. Who am I? Not that kind of person. I'm the kind of person where it's like if everything is quiet, that's good. If nothing is happening, it's gorgeous. Like, let me play my video games and watch my anime and my Netflix and read my book if I'm reading and go to work if I'm going to work in peace. Like, drama is not necessary. But some people get bored. You know, some people are more active, and I am more not active. So the next card we have is foul play. We have foul play again. Destroy target creature with power 2 or less. Investigate. So again, when you investigate, you create an artifact token that you can sacrifice to draw a card. The evidence was overwhelming. Tovalar's Howl Pack was getting bolder, smarter, and stronger. So we have foul play again. We have the Village Reavers again, the Village Watch again. Foul play is actually coming out under Dennick. I'm not surprised that foul play came out under Dennick. I think this is why I like Dennick, the pious one, because he's the human soldier. In foul play, that was some human governing body that was like pinning a lot of stuff, trying to make the werewolves and the witches look bad, when in reality, the real villains were the humans all along. Like, it's the people that are the most righteous, the most unassuming, the ones that you think you can trust that end up being the ones who are actually doing whatever. But it's almost at the same time very magician in terms of like the art of misdirection. They get you to look one way so that they can get away with doing whatever over here. It's like a mirror of a magician. It's the art of misdirection. So I guess just be careful when someone tries to make a villain of especially a whole class or a whole group of people. And they got Dennick. Of course they got Dennick because Dennick was pious. And that, like, Dennick is the type of person who would join a governing body because they want to help people. And Dennick may never necessarily discover the truth of, like, it's actually a shady organization. And, like, they'll take care of Dennick before Dennick can. Or maybe Dennick finds something out. Dennick is like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I signed up to help people. I signed up to actually be of service. I signed up to do some good. And you're telling me that we're like lying to people? Oh no, like, I'm going to go to people and I'm going to tell the truth. That's how you make enemies. And Dennick made some enemies, and foul play got him too. Oh no, Dennick was slain by the werewolves. Can you believe it? Meanwhile, it was people. But again, it's that art of misdirection. And Dennick, I put everything, well, let's see, on this side. Oh yeah, but that's when after he's already in the grave. He gets a little stronger. It's power 2 or less. That's Dennick. They took care of Dennick. They got my boy. They got the one who was doing it for the right reasons. Foul play again. The next card is Volderin Ambusher. This is a vampire. Now we got vampires. Okay, we had all werewolves yesterday and mostly werewolves today. When Volderin Ambusher enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, it deals X damage up to one target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of vampires you control. And all it says is gotcha. That's it. The flavor text, gotcha. We got a vampire archer and a werewolf archer. Now the vampire archer comes out under the stalking predator. The vampire archer is like 2/2. The vampire archer can take out a werewolf during the day, but after they transform, it's over. The interesting thing about the vampire too is, unlike the werewolf, they're the same during both the nighttime and the daytime. But it's easier for a vampire to blend in during the day than it is for a werewolf to blend in at night. So even when you see the true nature of the vampire, they can still look like mostly human. With the werewolf, it's like completely different. If they have the nature of the beast, if they have the nature of a beast, especially in the presence of, she's still at the top, light up the night, then their beastly nature will be revealed. That's our stalking predator and the wing shredder. She's an admirer of birds, but she like kills them. I don't. It's fine. It is what it is. Her truth is wing shredder. I guess that's also interesting. I never necessarily thought of a werewolf curse as a revealer of truth. It's almost like I never watched True Blood or the first follow-up series, but I did watch Legacies. And Legacy, no, and I think in the originals, I never watched True Blood and I never watched the originals. I think in either the originals or True Blood, I was scrolling. What was I scrolling? I feel like how did I see that? It wouldn't have been on my Facebook. It had to be on Twitter, but I don't know why I would have seen it on Twitter. I was scrolling something. And there was a clip where it was like there was a lady that was telling somebody in order for a vampire to sire to somebody, it depends on emotions that they had for the vampire before they're turned into a vampire. Vampirism only heightens those emotions. So if there's like a vampire that's trying to make a whole, whatever you call it, of vampires, if none of those people felt emotions for the vampire, like cared for the vampire before they were turned into vampires, they're not going to care about that person after they become vampires. Like they're not going to sire anybody because there was no emotion. It relies on human emotion. And then it showed a clip of some of the girls from Legacies where she did actually sire to somebody and she was like, I hate that I love you. Why is it giving me that? Oh, because it's the revealer of one's true nature. So it's almost like if someone suffers a werewolf curse or whatever, and it's almost like how devil energy was coming through, where it works on what is already there. Like devil energy can't get anybody to do anything that they don't want to do, but it can like really play on something that's there. But there has to be something there in the beginning for devil energy to like amplify. So again, not to say that, devil energy is completely unresponsible or whatever, but the truth is something had to be there to begin with. It can't implant a desire to do anything that someone doesn't already want to do again. And so if someone were to become like this werewolf, then their nature was always one of a beast. Lycanthropy doesn't turn people into monsters. It just reveals the monsters that they already were behind closed doors or out in the world. And that was something else too. What was that? I feel like that came out a while ago. Like that was a minute ago. Oh, that's how like they say absolute power corrupts absolutely. And opportunity makes a thief. If opportunity is all that someone needs to become a thief, then they were already a thief. They just didn't have the opportunity. That's like someone saying like, oh, I would totally steal that if somebody just like left it there. That's like if someone were talking to you and they're like, oh, well, if you ever leave whatever just sitting around, I would totally steal it. And you're like, you're not like, if opportunity is the only thing that someone needs, if a little bit of power is the only thing that someone needs to go completely whatever, like they were already like that. They just didn't have the means to be who they truly are. And again, maybe that's a little reductive of people. Maybe it's more complicated than that. But we have our pious apparition here. We got our village watch. Like the people who were on it, who were already whatever, death doesn't change them. and no curse or misfortune could get them to be anything that they're not. It was already there. But again, the thing with the vampire is in daytime and in nighttime, they look pretty much the same, unless they're like crispy vampires or a Twilight vampire. So I guess that's fair. Because in Twilight, the vampires sparkle in the daytime, and in other movies, they just like disintegrate as soon as they touch sunlight. But the werewolves look like humans. So maybe that's incorrect. Maybe we don't actually see. But if it's like inside, and they don't touch daylight, then they look. I don't know. Anyway, maybe I can be wrong. But we got our first vampire on the table, and then we have the candlelit cavalry. The candlelit cavalry. This is a human knight. Coven, at the beginning of combat, on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, candlelit cavalry gains trample until end of turn. On this night, the dark will fear us. Oof. And the candlelit cavalry is coming out under the village reavers, the village watch. Now it's the village watch in the daytime. See, this is so like it's not weird per se necessarily, but it's just like well, maybe that's not. Maybe whatever this foul play is, it takes advantage of generalization. Let's say that. It takes advantage of chaos. It takes advantage of generalizations that people make. And it uses them to operate like covertly itself. Because maybe like this is already like the thing between the stalking predator, the village reavers, and the wing shredder is already happening, where you get like the good werewolves versus the bad werewolves or whatever. And then you get your organization that takes advantage of the chaos of the bad werewolves, and they do stuff to Dennett to make it look like, oh, well, the werewolves did it. Because they know that that's the association that people already have, and it's not too far of a stretch to go like, oh, well, if the werewolves do this, then yeah, they did that too. Right. And then I don't know if you got vampires coming in on it, like, oh yeah, it was the werewolves. I'm like, check the neck. Check the neck. Because the scorpion looks different than the snake. The scorpion sting looks different than a snake bite. Unless you got a scorpion with 2 stingers. But it feels like the candlelit cavalry is the faction of people that know that, like, you got your good werewolves and your bad werewolves. And they're the ones on the side with the good werewolves. And I almost wonder, because I was just talking about the true nature of a person, how there are things that reveal the true nature of a person. And again, true nature can be reductive. So when I say, or when I use the phrase like opportunity makes a thief, I'm talking about an opportunity that's more like, oh, someone left this unattended. That means it's fair game. Not necessarily, I'm starving, my family is starving, I'm going to go like steal some bread from this bread cart. You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about necessity. We're talking about opportunity. Specifically opportunity, nothing about necessity. Necessity is like just that's somebody that's trying to survive. Opportunity is somebody who, whatever they do is the reason why they do it. But it's almost like the candlelit cavalry members that get bitten by werewolves, they turn into the village watch because that's their nature. Their nature is still whatever. And so their form may change, or they may suffer a curse that changes their form, but the nature, the character remains the same. They remain just as vigilant, just as upright, just as trustworthy, just as everything. And it feels like maybe that's their time. And maybe it took one of the candlelit cavalry becoming a werewolf to show that to the candlelit cavalry. They're like, oh, just because you go through this circumstance, just because you go through this situation, just because you suffer this misfortune, doesn't mean that you turn into like a terrible person. Like, it is possible to experience misfortune and still remain a good person. It's possible to be cursed and not become a beast that is just like ravenous and unstoppable type energy. You know what I mean? This vampire still feels a little out of place to me. The vampire ambusher. On this night, the dark will fear us. And they got 5/5. Like, they're, besides the tavern smasher, they're like the strongest on the table. The tavern smasher is just that anomaly. The tavern smasher is the person, or the type of person that could be so gifted in something that they're just like bored in life because there's nothing that's necessarily capable of holding their attention. It's like someone who picks up on everything too quickly and all they want is to really, it's so weird how sometimes like people can want to struggle, but that's the type of person that wants to struggle because like everything is just, it's like too easy. And so it's difficult to invest in anything, and without an investment it's just like, it's the child with too much energy and not enough stuff to do. Next, we have the Bramble Armor. This is an artifact. When Bramble Armor enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets 2 power, 1 toughness, and it costs 4 mana to attach. And you equip it as a sorcery. This Bramble Armor is interesting. I'm trying to look to see if any of the barbs on the bramble go inwards. And it doesn't. Like, I'm not seeing any blood on the person. So it doesn't harm the caster. From what I can, and it's like blurry. Maybe I'll cover my face. There we go. We'll go up there. There we go. It doesn't look like any of the barbs point inward to dig into her skin or their skin. It's also like coming off of the tree. So I feel like it's the tree that's providing this bramble armor and not necessarily someone like ripping brambles off of the tree. See, I went too close. Can I walk it back? Can I walk it back? Can I walk it back? Trying to walk back the focus. Let's walk back the focus. Ha! No? No, this comes out under the wing shredder, but next to the candlelit cavalry. The candlelit cavalry and the Timberland guide are the only, and wing shredder. Oh, wing shredder is also like that earth element. Wow. So which one's got the bramble armor? Now, if it goes to wing shredder, she becomes as powerful as the candlelit cavalry and tougher. As powerful, but has more defense than the candlelit cavalry. If it goes to the candlelit cavalry, then the candlelit cavalry is even tougher than the tavern smasher. But the tavern smasher would still be strong enough to take the tavern smasher has like 6 power. So even with this plus, now if the Timberland Guide and Bramble Armor work with the Candlelit Cavalry, then it would be able to defeat the Tavern Smasher and survive. To subdue. It would be able to subdue the Tavern Smasher and survive. But this Bramble Armor is also like this natural world protection, which is interesting to me because I feel like there's an element there that feels selective in some way. It's almost feeling like I'm trying to search my brain for an instance of it. It feels like like it's something that could be beneficial to somebody, but if someone is like sick, then it would attack them. So it's almost like they're immune. Like if someone's immune system would recognize the Bramble Armor as invasive or not. If someone's immune system were to recognize the Bramble Armor as invasive, then it would like be this battle. But if someone's immune system was able to like incorporate it, then that's when it would become the armor that protects. And because it's natural, I feel like it's non-aspected, meaning it's not necessarily good or bad. Like this would be one of those things where if it was like a movie and there was a weapon that, like there's a legendary weapon or something, but there's like a villain with a legendary weapon, and then people are like, well, that person's a villain. How could they have a legendary weapon? And it's almost like the weapon accepts a master that has a certain level of conviction. And when it comes to the word conviction, there's a positive connotation, or like we assume that conviction is like a good thing because we associate conviction with good. We think only someone good could be the wielder of the weapon, but someone could be a villain and still have convictions that make them villainous. You know what I mean? And the weapon just recognizes conviction. It doesn't recognize good or bad. Just like how dedicated are you to whatever you're about? If you're serious about what you're doing, I will help you. Good, bad, I'm indifferent. Doesn't matter. I just don't want to be in the hands of someone who is like wishy-washy or who will harbor regret or whatever after the fact. It's almost like that type of energy. So again, it could go either way. Because it's one of those things where like the love that the bird watcher has for the birds is so like pure that even though she hunts the birds, she still loves them. So Bramble Armor would recognize her, just like Bramble Armor would recognize the Candlelit Cavalry. So she's almost giving me a little bit of this Tavern Smasher or Bramble Armor. The armor is almost giving me a little bit of this Tavern Smasher, but because it's like natural armor, it's almost like Bramble Armor has to be non-polarized, because in life there are highs and there are lows, there is good and there is bad, there is the favorable and the unfavorable, there is the fortunate and the unfortunate slash misfortunate. And again, like because she belongs to the natural world exists outside of the world of humanity. It exists outside the world of morality, of good, bad. In the natural world, it's lion is hungry, lion got to eat, gazelle is there, or the antelope. It ain't got to be a gazelle. Sorry, my brain went to the savannah. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just like the bear is hungry, the bear's got to eat, the fish is there. If the fish gets away, good for the fish. It gets to live to see another day. If the bear catches the fish, good for the bear. It gets to live to see another day. It doesn't starve that day. There is no whatever. And it's not to say that like morality and ethics are a bad thing, or that they're things that we necessarily need to abandon. It's just like there's a different set of rules for wildlife. Wow, we got more cards. And then we get another Timberland Guide. When Timberland Guide enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. This one is not shiny. Can we see his eyes now? No, it's funny. Timberland Guide. I'm back in focus, maybe, kinda. If I do this, we'll have a focus. It's not reflecting off my glasses. So this Timberland Guide is under the Tavern Smasher, but also to Bramble Armor. Now, if Tavern Smasher has a guide, then even with the Bramble Armor and the Timberland Guide, no, because that would be +3/+2. So that would put this at 8, 7. And the Tavern Smasher would be at 7, 6. So yeah. And then the vampire, I feel like the vampire is just here. The vampire is just like an opportunist. Because again, it's like if an opponent loses life, then you deal damage equal to the number of vampires you control. So, be it the blood of a werewolf or the blood of a human, wherever there is blood to be shed, there's a vampire to look it up, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's offensive to vampires. Maybe that's also why, though, the vampire follows this stalking predator. The shady traveler. And look, he's got a knife. The shady traveler has pulled a knife. Maybe that's why the vampires follow him, because it just leaves a trail of bloody people. The vampires can hide themselves in the carnage of a werewolf. Because if you see because I'm thinking of like a werewolf. Werewolf carnage is like someone that's torn to pieces. Vampire carnage is someone that's been drained of their blood because, it was sipped out of the neck. And if someone's already in pieces or whatever, like you wouldn't even necessarily check. So it's not necessarily an energy that's like a premature diagnosis, but it isn't necessarily complete either. Because it's almost like if someone would have somehow survived the shady traveler stalking predator, the vampire would have finished them off. But that's not the immediate thing that we go to. So maybe that can be an energy too of like oversimplifying things. And I know, especially with these, I'm talking about nature and the revealer of nature. And I know that we're humans, it's complicated. It's not necessarily as simple as opportunity and power. Sometimes it seems like it is. Especially maybe not. Because with power sometimes comes responsibility. So if someone has more power and then they have more responsibility, in order to meet that responsibility, they may act differently. It's like, let's say that there's someone who gets promoted within a body of people who are working. And it's like, when you were working with us, like you didn't have a problem with us doing this or with us doing that. But now that you're promoted, you want to act like you're different. You want to act like you're better than us. It was like, Now I'm responsible. Before I wasn't responsible for you. Before your work spoke of you and not me. But now that I got promoted, now that I'm like managing, I'm responsible for what goes out. Because if I tried to manage you when I wasn't your manager, guess what you tell me? You're not my manager. And you would have been right. But now I am. And here we are. So maybe it isn't that power changes somebody in a way that's not to be expected. And sometimes you got to grow up. It's like, well, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to do this too, but I'm not a kid anymore. When I didn't have responsibilities, yeah, I spent all my money on video games, but now I got bills I got to pay. You know what I mean? It's like it's a part of, sometimes it's a part of maturation. And it isn't necessarily as simple. I feel like, again, they're like the stalking predator and the vampire, the Voldemort ambusher at a level of surprising complexity, especially because something can be so easily one thing, or it could seem like it's so easily one thing. And Patrick is also learning to be flexible, I guess. So maybe it's things for me to consider. And maybe that's why, again, in the beginning, it's like, I'm going to try not to put all of this is how stuff works, this is how some people are on this, because it is what it is. And it'll resonate differently in the cases where it resonates. Like sometimes it is how people are, sometimes it's necessity and it's not opportunity. I don't know. I'm not in a place where I necessarily need to know either. So it's almost like, because in the reading with the scorpion and the snake, it was like if you were to look at the wound and you only see one indentation, like unless it's a one fanged snake running out here, when you know that like scorpions are a problem, it's probably a scorpion. And also like look at the symptoms. Maybe scorpion stings manifest differently on a body than snake bites. But this is almost a case of like, well, what if someone got stung by a scorpion and bit by a snake? And you just go to the first wound site and like, oh, you see the scorpion stinger first, and then you don't even search if the person got bit by a snake. Maybe it was a little premature, and I was like, wow, I never considered that. That's on me. That's why when I get a title card, I honor it. Because I know Patrick ain't perfect and Patrick don't know everything. Regardless of how stubborn and fixed Patrick can be sometimes. And again, it just feels like this one feels so much busier than the other one. Like there are so many things going on multiple fronts. There are things that lie in the shadow of other things and create their own whatever. And then we see the Timberland guide again. Hiring an experienced wilderness guide isn't cheap, but it costs less than a search party or a funeral. Excuse me. And maybe that can be like something like a parallel of that could be like doing the work isn't easy, but it's easier than continuing to suffer. Type, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't come without sacrifice, it doesn't come without extended effort, but the cost of not doing it isn't necessarily any cheaper than the cost of doing it. And it's almost like it's using our metrics. So it's using what's important to us personally. And I think sometimes in instant gratification brain, but not necessarily instant gratification brain, in terms of like immediacy or in terms of what's right in front of our faces, it's easier, not easier. I think a lot of times when we're asked to make decisions and to evaluate something, for a lot of people, we look at like the cost up front, right? Like if something is $1,000 and then like $50 a week for a month versus something that you can buy into for $5, and you, over the course of a year, you pay like 5 and then 10, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000. We would look, oh, like $1,000 is a lot more expensive than this $5, so the $5 is a better choice. But if you look and if you project it out, you would actually see that the one that costs more upfront may in the long term be more beneficial than the one that costs less upfront. But again, it's in terms of our metrics. It's communicated as cost, or it's communicated as cost. But in terms of like the journey, it could be effort. Like it would take a lot more work and a lot more effort up front for me to do this and do that and do all of this other stuff than it would take for me to do the other thing. So I think I'm going to do the other thing. But in the long run, in non-immediate terms, and again, like we live in the now moment. The now moment is the only moment. The future doesn't exist. So what does it mean for something to be better in the long run when the long run is an illusion? And now is the only thing that matters. So it makes sense. It makes good spiritual sense to go for the thing that's $5, because that's $5 now. And the $10 and the $50 and the $100, 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000. Fives and ones, you get it? You see it? Like that doesn't, it's like having a credit card. You swipe it and you don't pay anything now, and then you get the thing. And then that's like future needs problem. It's like, why worry about a tense that doesn't even exist? Because someday the future will be now. It's just the now moment that hasn't occurred yet. And it will be you. That will be your now then. And yes, you could be different. Yes, there's a whole bunch of things that could change that no one knows. But still, it will be you. It will be the you then that will be looking at the you now, saying, congrats, pal, we made the right choice. Or if I could go back, maybe I wouldn't max out my credit card. Maybe I would have went without this or without that, because interest is also a thing. You know what I mean? And the last card, we have the mountain, and it's a full art mountain. This mountain looks so similar to the island. It's this black and white, but I feel like light isn't bathing the mountain the same way that light was bathing that island. Because the island looked like it could have been a swamp. I shuffled it back in with the other ones. And again, I feel like it's the mountain because it's an acknowledgement of, first of all, it's the acknowledgement of challenge. It's the acknowledgement of difficulty. Did I not put the cards in here? Where are they? Oh, yeah, I did. I just got to find it. So the island felt like it was bathed in light. The mountain doesn't necessarily feel the same, but also water reflects and refracts light. So that's why. Earth doesn't refract and reflect light the same way that water does, unless you're talking about maybe like a crystal. But like mountains, it depends what's on the mountain. And then last but not least, we have our art card. This is forest. Oh, well, this is the same. Now we have the forest. We have the forest. We have the mountain. What's interesting to me, though, is you see that right there in the forest. I was looking at this island and I was like, is that a person? like right here. I was like, is that a person? And then you look at the forest and it looks like the same person. Is that another person up there? What is that? I don't even know if I saw these people the first time I looked at the island. I guess this is also interesting, especially the forest, because the holographic Timberland guide with the blank two-faced card, the one-sided card that's meant to represent a two-faced card, it's like it was giving me an energy that was almost like the branches and the realms on the world tree are like shuffling. And another thing, there is it's that duplicity. Is that multiplicity? It may not be. It's almost like there are because we start with a blank single-sided card, single-faced card that's meant to represent a two-faced card, a double-faced card, but we see both faces at the same time. That's also weird. This is almost like seeing Superman and Clark Kent in the same room, seeing the human and the werewolf. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the. Does this? That probably doesn't help. Maybe that is looking at the situation for the amount of complexity that it holds. This single faced card that's meant to represent a double faced card is seeing both the aftermath of the werewolf and the aftermath of the vampire. It's seeing both the snake bite and the scorpion sting. It's seeing both natures because we have many as humans. You see the nature of the beast and the nature of the man at the same time. But it's just like imagine a world where every alter ego exists alongside each other. Is there a main ego? Where's Rob? I might need to send Rob a message. Because, like, what do you call the main ego? Like an alter ego, another self? What do you call the main self? What do you call it? Just the ego and the alter ego? You see the id, the ego, and the super ego all at the same time. And just like I can't even imagine how like bizarre that would be. I can't imagine how bizarre it would be like seeing it and observing it, like to see someone else in their alter ego at the same time. But I also can't imagine like to be one of those alter egos faced with yourself. Because Clark Kent and Superman are the same person. So if Clark Kent is looking at Superman, does that mean that Clark Kent doesn't have access to all of his Superman stuff? You know what I mean? Like, could Clark Kent still do everything that Superman could do if Superman was looking at Clark Kent? Anyway, oof. Oh, the wilderness. Those were the cards too. So maybe I'll move this down here because we got the Timberland guide, the mountain, and the forest. Also, I was thinking about it a few days ago how on 4/8/2024, which is an 8, we're going to be having the solar eclipse, right? 4 plus 8 is 20, and 20 is judgment. And I was like, oof. Oof. Judgment energy, which is also the high priestess if you break it down to a two. So high priestess and judgment on the solar eclipse. See, well, Maybe this is an energy of like if things were complex before, they're about to get real complicated for a hot second. And it's only getting complicated because there were a few messages that was like, you don't tell the child anything that the child isn't ready to handle. Like there are certain truths and certain things that should not be put upon a child. But when one becomes an adult, even when one becomes an adult, even if one isn't ready, because they're an adult, they still get like you get the truth because you're not a child anymore. And so this is almost like we've been given such a simplified view of so many things, but we're not children anymore. But for us to be the individual that goes from like being exposed to this much or really knowing, really seeing this much to seeing that much, it's like, it's of course, like it's expected to be overwhelming. It's expected. It's not unexpected. If there's a little bit of overwhelm or if there is confusion or whatever, because it's like, it's just an influx of so much. And it really feels like imagine that this is the main like conflict or whatever. We got werewolves and we got people. And now we're like, well, there are good werewolves and there are not good werewolves. And then some of the things behind the bad werewolves, like vampires follow bad werewolves, or vampires are also a thing. But then in your werewolves versus people, whatever, there are good people and there are bad people. And there's this whole organization of bad people that mask their actions behind the actions of werewolves in general, good or bad. And then it's almost like it's bringing so many things. It's almost like presenting an entire uh it's not a crime scene where, but you know the thing when someone like has all of the string and the yarn and the pictures and the articles, it's like you think it's this one little thing and like boom, here's the whole thing. And it's like to like really get to see. And I feel like that's why this Timberland guide is here twice, to help through the wilderness. And it may not, like, it's almost like it may not be, I think sometimes, I guess I'm not supposed to do this because I literally said I wouldn't do this. But I think sometimes whenever we get overwhelmed, especially overwhelmed with information, maybe our brains just like shut down. And it's like, I'd rather just keep believing what I believed before because this is too much. Or we just like shatter. Or somehow we get it together and we can integrate it. But that also kind of sort of came out, was that last time or the time before that too? Because I remember I went to the Mausolea Oracle of Souls to try to find that one card. But yeah, I guess it's a lot. Maybe there could be some major scientific breakthrough. Scientists finally cracked the nature of dark matter or antimatter and the limitless energy that Nikola Tesla tapped into, that has been the subject of science fiction for however long. We discover it. We discover the thing that is the key to limitless energy. So electricity and like everything will change. Everything is going to change because of this discovery. And it's almost one of those things that's so like, in that case, it would be so big. It almost like wouldn't make sense to not just roll it out. And when things like that aren't just rolled out, then it's like, oh, well, the government was hiding this or that person was hiding this other thing. And we've been living in the Stone Ages. Meanwhile, they've been living in the future. don't know. It's just like prepared for, and I guess I don't want to. I mean, that's just, and it's not even that things necessarily get more complicated because it's just like seeing more. And it almost, because I know Remi's been talking about new awakenings, second awakenings, and with the energy of the high priestess, like you're not being shown, you're just seeing. And it's just like, well, yeah, like here's here's more. And you're just like, it can also be like information overload. It's just like, well, what do I do with this? You know what I mean? I don't know. Or maybe our true natures will be revealed, but the dichotomous tone of our natures will also be revealed. Like we'll get to see multiple sides of ourselves and others, or we will be reminded to also consider that not all the time is one face that we see of a person the entirety of their collection of faces or like the entirety of their personality. Maybe it is like, just because someone's having a bad day or a rough day or they're less patient on this day doesn't necessarily mean that we should judge them or who and how they are as a whole. Because maybe it was just like, maybe they were going through something. You never know. And we can be affected and impacted by things. Again, it was like the necessity versus opportunity. To become a thief out of necessity is different than to be a thief for funsies or out of opportunity. Right? Like there's a difference between, again, it's just like the person who's like stealing food to survive is different. Beckoning Will-O-Wisp is at the bottom of the deck, and Foul Play is the card that came out. Oh. Destroy target creature with power 2 or less. Investigate. I guess I never considered that they could be investigating Foul Play. This is almost giving me more like investigating Foul Play because Foul Play could destroy the Will-O-Wisp. And then you can investigate and see, like, well, where was the Will-O-Wisp, like, trying to guide people? Or, like, what is the source of the Will-O-Wisp? Will-O-Wisp, Beckoning Wisp especially, Will-O-Wisp is such an interesting energy because follow the light at your own risk. And then it's interesting it comes out with Foul Play because Foul Play has been playing that polarity duality of sometimes something that presents itself as light, something that presents itself as helpful could actually have like bad intentions and not be. And it was just like, it's like almost like the nice guy, right? Like instead of coming out and being upright or not upright, but upfront with my intentions, I'm going to hide my intentions behind niceties. And then when you don't do whatever, I'm going to be like, oh, well, like I was nice to you. Don't you think I deserve this? Because I was nice. And it was like, okay, so you weren't being nice. Because if you were being good for goodness sake, you wouldn't be crying that you got coal for Christmas. You're being good because you wanted a stocking full of presents. They're different, completely different things. Right? But also, we tell kids, be good if you want presents. And so when they're good, and maybe that's another thing, because I feel like on one hand, it's like, well, if you're good, then you'll be rewarded for it. But at the same time, we don't want people to have to be incentivized to do good. But also, children are children. And it isn't necessarily always fair to make a case for adults based off of the way that children are treated, but it isn't necessarily unfair because adults were children. It just is what it is. I'm like, you know what? it is what it is. But it always is what it is. We can see what is, we can not see what is. We see what we see, and then we make choices and decisions based off of the best we can, or based off of what we desire. Sometimes we can do better, but we desire whatever we desire, and we make choices that align with our desires. And it's not to say that that's necessarily bad or that that's necessarily wrong, but choices come with consequences and actions. And uh, sometimes it is what it is, I don't know. Anyway, cool. But yeah, I feel like that could be investigating foul play rather than the source of it, especially with the beckoning will-o-wisp. Is that it? I think that's it. I think I'm done today. That was the last booster pack. What am I going to title this? I'm going to title it right now so I don't have to do it when this video is over. Happy 4/4, I guess, too. That's today, if you celebrate. Booster, : seeing the complexity of it all. Say of shifting trees, wilderness guides. I put that's not how you spell. Oh, I put an N in wilderness. There we go. Wilderness guides of shifting trees, wilderness guides, and opened eyes, opening, shifting trees, wilderness guides, and opening eyes. There we go. I hope you all have an amazing whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope whatever you need along your path, journey, and what you find. I hope whatever comfort or wisdom or patience or whatever you need. And again, things don't necessarily have to get real crazy. This could also this could be you having realizations. That maybe something wasn't as simple as you thought it was. Like, let's say that there's someone in your life that maybe unbeknownst to you, they were going through something and whatever, but then you find out what they were going through and it causes you to reconsider where you stand. Maybe especially because Mercury is retrograde right now, potentially. And it's oh, well, if you were going through that, why didn't you tell me? Well, if it's personal and private enough, then maybe instead of why didn't you tell me? Maybe it's more just oh, I didn't know that. If I had known that that's what was going on, then I would feel a different type of way. And it's not it's not your fault for not telling me. It's just I didn't know. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine. There's a way to meet that with compassion. That isn't why didn't you tell me? Or maybe it is, why didn't you tell me? You knew that I was here for you. You knew that we were friends. You could have told me. It's yeah, but it was personal and it was too much and I couldn't even and sometimes it could be a reality that someone isn't ready to accept. So how can someone tell you something that either A, they haven't accepted, B, they don't see or recognize or know, or C, that they're not ready to accept or not ready to talk about. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's it. I'm all out of booster packs unless I got more dragons in the Dungeons and Dragon up there. But I feel good. I feel like my booster pack itch has been scratched raw, and I'm good for as long as I'm good for. And yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Bye.